Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Craig Steger. So, if you stumble upon this video or maybe this podcast, you're probably wondering who I am and what's this new YouTube channel or podcast. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So, my name is Craig Steger. I live in the Midwest, Wisconsin, and I live in the country. Have a homestead, about 20 acres, and I live with my wife and 9 children. I'm an attorney as my day job, um, but I also make a lot of online content, including YouTube videos for my business and other things, as well as podcasting. And so um, I have a number of YouTube channels, and I'll probably introduce you to those over the course, if not this show, of coming shows. And So one of the questions that I want to try and get out early on is, what's this show about? Why should I watch it? What am I going to get out of this show as opposed to any others? So there's a lot of shows out there. There's a lot of YouTube channels, a lot of really good YouTube channels, a lot of really good podcasts out there, and a lot of not so good podcasts out there. And the reason I decided to do this particular channel and this particular podcast is just my unique set of circumstances in life and my experience that um, I've just I've come to learn some things that I think might help other people um, figure some things out maybe a little quicker than I did. So I've been married over 20 years now. You know, our oldest couple of kids are out of the house. Our youngest is 2, and we're still changing diapers, and we've kind of got the whole gamut in between. I've been practicing attorney for almost 20 years now. I do primarily personal injury and civil litigation, and I deal a lot with insurance. So, one of the things that I really like to talk about is insurance because it's one of those necessary evils in life. And I see what good it can do when you have the right insurance. And I also have seen how bad it can be when you don't have the right insurance. And so, one of the things that I want to do on this channel is to talk about the things that I probably know a little bit more than the average person about, and hopefully at some point in time, bring other people on and have them talk about the things that they know a lot about. Such as, to give you an example, I've got some friends that are um, dairy farmers. You might want to have I might have an interview with them. I've got a friend that's written children's books. If you ever have any interest in writing books, that episode might be interesting. I've got friends that have online businesses, things like that. If you're interested in that, that's something that we might be able to talk about. If you're interested in starting your own channel or making your own content, um, I've learned a lot about that, and I've made a lot of mistakes, but I've kind of developed a system where I do a lot of it. And whether it's podcasting, YouTube videos, things, live streams, I really enjoy live streaming. That's what I'm doing right now. Even though no one's watching this because it's a newer channel, I like live streaming and it's a good skill to develop. I really think that live streaming is going to be the next podcast, because what's so beautiful about live streaming, once you have an established audience, is it gives people an opportunity to hear it interact with you in real time and ask the questions that they have in real time, as opposed to after the fact. And you may never hear those questions. You may never hear those comments because they're listening to you in their car. And I have nothing against podcast. I have my own podcast, and I'm going to put most of these on a podcast format for people that would like to listen to them in the car or at the gym. But there's something uniquely powerful about doing video, especially on YouTube and in particular live stream. And so that's one of the reasons I'm doing this, is to show how easy it is and to help other people that might be interested figure it out for yourselves. So, with that in mind, if you have any questions or comments after the fact, just go ahead and leave a comment below. Or if you go to the description, there should be a link to a link tree, linkwithcraig.com. I believe it will take you to a link tree. If you want to reach out to me, call, text, email me, whatever the case may be. I may even be able to put it on the screen here. That's one of the really cool things about StreamYard, which is what I'm using for this, is you can put stuff on the screen. I don't see it here. Let me add one. So I can add one. So so if you want to reach out to me, go to linkwithcraig.com. So if you go to linkwithcraig.com, that should take you to my link tree. You can always call or email me, call, text. I think there should be a WhatsApp number on there, I believe. If not, there's definitely an email address that you can use, and you can find me on the other socials, DM me, or whatever the case may be. So enough of that. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about insurance, just because it's something that most of us have or should have, but a lot of us probably don't really know how it works and what we're paying for and what we might be wanting to ask our insurance agent about. A couple things in mind. Um, though I'm an attorney, this is purely for informational purposes. This is not legal advice. You should definitely talk to your agent or talk to an attorney in the state that you're in if you have any specific question. I'm just providing general information from my own experience and in a special way experiences that I've had with insurance as they've come up in my own situation. So, with that, just making a note for myself. Uh, okay, very good. So let's start with auto insurance. So, auto insurance, most of us, I assume, have cars. And if you have a car, there's a really good chance you have insurance on it. Could be your bank requires you to have insurance on it because you have a loan on it. And so they want their collateral. Most likely, you gave the bank a security interest in your vehicle until you pay off the loan. So they want to make sure that if your car gets into a wreck or you hit a deer on the way home from work and the car has to be fixed or worse has to be replaced, that their money is covered. And that's one of the main reasons people have car insurance. But there's actually many other reasons why we carry in car insurance and what we pay for. So probably the main reason we actually have auto insurance, even though most of us don't think about it or want to think about it, is liability coverage. What do I mean by liability coverage? Well, that means if you're driving down the road and let's say you um, lose concentration for a little bit of time, maybe you get distracted by your phone or one of your kids in your car, and you're not paying attention, and you go through a stop sign, and God forbid you hit someone and you injure them. If you were negligent, if you weren't paying attention or driving too fast or not keeping a sufficient lookout, that in most states is going to constitute negligence. And so that's where your auto insurance provides liability insurance so that if someone else is injured because of your negligence, or even if you're not negligent, but they claim you were, your auto insurance is there to provide a legal defense. What does that mean? Number one, they will hire lawyers if you get sued to defend you at their cost. That's probably the main benefit is you get attorneys hired to defend you at the insurance company's expense. Second of all, if someone is actually injured and let's say they have a claim for pain and suffering, personal injuries, loss of earnings, medical expenses, things like that, or worse, someone is killed, burial expenses, and things like that. Um, the liability policy provides coverage up to your auto insurance limits for those losses caused by your negligence, or let's say someone else in your household, maybe your spouse, maybe one of your children, or someone else that is using your vehicle with your permission. Your auto insurance on the vehicle provides that kind of liability coverage for you or whoever's driving the vehicle with permission. So number one, liability coverage. Number two, collision coverage. And this kind of gets back to what I was talking about before. Most of us think about um, coverage on our vehicles so that if it gets damaged in a crash, someone's going to pay to fix it, or if it can't be fixed, to replace it. So that's collision coverage. That's coverage for damage to the vehicle. If you hit a deer, you lose control on a slippery road, and you hit a telephone pole, things like that. It's the coverage for the damage to the vehicle. If you don't have collision, if you have just liability, if you get into a wreck and there's not someone to sue, you are out of luck. You've lost the value of the vehicle, and you're going to have to find a replacement out of your own pocket. So that's why you carry collision coverage. Comprehensive coverage is similar to collision coverage, but it's really if you, let's say, a storm, a tree falls on your car and breaks it, or maybe someone vandalizes it. They slide under your car in the middle of the night and they cut off your catalytic converter. Those kinds of things. That is, in most policies, called comprehensive coverage. Um, Med pay or no fault PIP coverage, depending on the state that you're in, it may be one or the other or both. But that's a type of no fault coverage. Med pay in particular is in most insurance policies, probably. It's a small amount. Let's say it's a few $100s, maybe it's a few $1,000s, could be more. It's there to cover medical expenses that people have while they're injured in your car, or let's say you're at your home and they get injured, even if it's completely their fault. MedPay provides an initial coverage so people can go to the doctor. They don't have to be afraid to get in an ambulance. They can go to the doctor or the ER and get checked out. That's kind of what MedPay is for. Um, Let me give you an example. Um, so our our oldest daughter, who is now 19, she was probably, I don't know how old she was, 5 maybe, 4 or 5, something like that. And I think we were moving. We were moving from an apartment into a house that we had bought. This is when we lived down in Iowa. We had bought this beautiful old brick house, and we were um, moving. I think we were moving into it, or maybe we were moving from our first house down there. And so I had a small trailer, just a 4x8 two-wheel trailer that I pull behind one of the cars or the van. And we had a storage unit. And we had gone out to the storage unit. We had dropped some stuff off. And I was actually going to leave the trailer in the storage unit because I think we were renting an apartment at that time. And I didn't really have a place to store this trailer. So I said, well, let's just we'll pull the trailer into it. You can move it around by hand. So I'm in there, I'm pulling on this trailer, and there's kind of a curb. I remember it being like a 6-inch curb where the cement floor inside the storage unit was quite a bit higher than the driveway around it. And so I went and I got a run for it, and I was going to kind of bounce it up over over the curb. And I wasn't really thinking. It was the end of the day. I was in a hurry, and all of a sudden my daughter runs out. She's like, "I'll help you, Dad." She's going to push on the backside. Well, she did, and just as it went up, the tongue went up, the back of the trailer went down, and her toes, she was just wearing sandals or Crocs, got underneath the back of the trailer, and I'll be darned if I didn't smash her toes under one foot. Talk about feeling stupid, and kind of one of my low moments as a dad was smashing my daughter's feet with the trailer. It was my fault, even though she was trying to help. Um, I just got in a hurry. But anyway, so we it was pretty obvious that she probably had some broken bones. So we got the trailer into the shed, into the storage unit, locked it up, and then we went up to the local hospital. This is down in Decorah, Iowa. So took her to the hospital. They did some X-rays, and yep, it's definitely some broken bones and kind of shattered some of those small foot. Like I said, she was 4 or 5 at the time, and they're like, "We're gonna have to do surgery. We're actually gonna have to go in and kind of clean out some of those bones." And I was like, "Oh man." And I don't remember my health insurance situation at the time because I just switched jobs to move down there. And I think I did, but there was a big deductible or copay, whatever the case may be. And I'll do a video another time on health insurance. But so we went down there and she had surgery and they fixed it up. But to this day, she has sort of a deformed toenail, I think on the one foot. Not sure which foot it is. But with the surgery and the hospital stay, I mean, I don't even remember. This has been probably, well, it's been 15 years ago now. 10. Let's see. Wow, time flies. 15 years ago now, probably. And we got a big bill, probably $15,000. And and so I was trying to figure out how I'm going to pay for this, either without health insurance or with these big deductibles. And so I got to thinking, I was like, I wonder if my auto insurance covers this because the trailer was not hooked to the vehicle at the time. We weren't obviously driving down the road, but we were unhooking this trailer. We had just pulled it there with the van and we're unhooking it and moving it out of the way. And so I remember going back with the forth with my insurance company, and they're like, "Oh, this isn't." The agent's like, "There's no way this is covered." I'm like, "Well, send me the policy." So they sent me the policy, and I went through it. I'm like, "I think this is coverage." It was like loading and unloading. There's coverage for loading and unloading trailers. And he's like, "Huh, I think you're right." So they went back and they're like, "Yep, there is coverage." And somehow I ended up with like $25,000 in med pay, which is kind of a ridiculously high amount of med pay. But because I stopped to read the policy, and as a lawyer, I'm more, accustomed to doing this, but this is my own situation, my own policy. So I looked at the policy, I read it, and I was like, yeah, there's coverage. And I got the insurance company to pay for that. And it was coverage that I never would have thought I had. Um, but because of the way the policy was written, I was able to get that stuff paid for, and we used the med pay to cover those expenses. So I was very grateful for the med pay coverage. Um, other something similar to med pay, depending on the state you're in. For example, Minnesota, across the river from us, is a no fault state, and so they have mandatory PIP coverage, PIP, which I think stands for personal injury protection, PIP. And I believe it has, you'll have to check, but like $20,000 of medical expense coverage and $20,000 of mandatory lost earnings coverage. That's no fault based, which means that if you're injured in a car accident, even if it's your own fault in Minnesota, you're maybe entitled up to $20,000 of medical expense coverage and also $20,000 in lost earnings. And obviously, you might be entitled to that even if someone else negligently causes your injuries or whatever. But even if you're not, even if it's just completely your fault or no one's fault, you may be entitled to that coverage. It's something that's mandatory by, let's say, Minnesota, and other no fault states may have a similar thing. But what's interesting is because I'm a Wisconsin resident, if I drive across, and we don't have PIP coverage, we don't have no fault here in Wisconsin, but if I drive across the river, my insurance policy has a provision, and this is probably mandated by statute in Minnesota, that when we come across the river, my policy is in effect modified to include the minimum coverages required under the laws of that state. Same thing if someone, let's say, because Iowa, I'm not sure Iowa has any mandatory limits for liability insurance. So if you, let's say you have $10,000 of limits in Iowa and you drive to Wisconsin and you get into a crash, your policy may be upgraded to, I think we have $25,000 mandatory limits. Used to have a lot more until the law was changed. But so when you cross state lines, typically the auto policy will adjust to have the minimum requirements of that state. So PIP coverage is something that applies typically just in no fault states such as Minnesota. Um, and the other thing might be like you might have coverage for like towing, roadside assistance, rental vehicles. Let's say you get in a crash and your car's in the shop for 2 weeks or is totaled and you have to buy another vehicle. There may be rental coverage. You have to check your policy, talk to your insurance agent about that. Um, one other thing. What was I gonna? Maybe that's it. If it comes to me, I'll bring it up. But that's kind of the main parts of auto insurance coverage. And so couple things I wanted to talk about with auto insurance before I move on to homeowners. Couple things to keep in mind. If you or one of your children, let's say, drives for Uber or Lyft or one of these ride shares, be aware that there's probably an exclusion in the homeowner in your auto policy for that kind of activity. Um, and unless you specifically purchase coverage for that. And if that's the case, you need to make sure that they have insurance coverage through Uber or Lyft. I think Uber, they provide insurance for their drivers, and I'm guessing, but I don't know this for sure that the other companies have that too. But if you start, doing around here, we have people that drive the Amish around because the Amish don't have cars. And if you're doing it for money, if your people are paying you to haul them around, be very, very careful because if you get into a crash, you may not have coverage for you or your passengers if you're driving people around for money. If you're just hauling people out of the good of your heart, that's a different matter. Uh, but for um, but for driving for hire, there may be an exclusion for that. Similarly, if you are, let's say, delivering pizza or DoorDash and stuff like that, I also see a lot of insurance policies that have exclusions for that. And so be very, very careful. And usually you can purchase that specific endorsement. I have no idea how much it costs, but that's something to keep in mind. So if you're delivering food, if you're delivering for restaurants or delivering anything like that, just be aware that your auto policy may have exclusionary coverage for that. And so what you don't want to have happen is buy all this insurance and then get into an accident and then find out it's worthless because you didn't get that type of coverage or it's excluded. Let's see. Oh, the other thing before I move on, I remembered it now. For your auto policy, if you have a loan against your car, realize that typically most insurance policies for auto, and this is both liability and collision, cover the fair market value of a vehicle, not, let's say, the sticker price or not how much is owed on it. It's the fair market value, which is like, your Kelly Blue Book or something like that. A lot of cars, because people, a lot of, especially if it's early on in the loan process, the car is probably depreciated faster, is faster than you're paying down on it because you're typically paying interest on the front end of the loan. If that happens, the fair market value of the vehicle can be less, maybe a lot less than what's owed on it. And if you get into a car accident and the car is totaled, guess what? There may not be enough insurance there to cover the bank note that you have on it, and you may have to pocket, satisfy that out of pocket. We call that gap coverage. Sometimes you can get it through your lender, and sometimes you can get it through your car insurance. Um, but you might want to check so that you're not paying for it on both ends. But gap coverage helps protect you in that situation. So if you have a newer vehicle, if it's a newer loan, I mean, even if it's not, I mean, you want to make sure that you can pay the bank loan off if the car gets wrecked in a crash. So um, those are the main things I wanted to talk about when it comes to auto insurance. A couple of, I guess, the other thing I would say is this: your auto insurance should um, go with you if you're driving someone else's vehicle, as long as you have their permission or you're riding in someone else's vehicle, or if you're a pedestrian, you're crossing the street or riding your bike and you get hit by someone driving their car, your auto insurance um, will probably actually cover you there, med pay, and if the other driver doesn't have insurance, provides you with insurance coverage there. So realize that auto insurance doesn't just apply if you're driving the vehicle that is insured, but actually it goes with you. If you are the named insured, that insurance actually transfers with you as long as you're in any other kind of vehicle. Even if you're riding in an Uber or something like that, you probably have your same auto coverage for you there. So something to keep in mind. So that's enough about auto insurance. Let's talk about homeowners insurance a little bit. So homeowners insurance, similar to auto, does a variety of things, some of which we typically think about, and a lot of which we probably don't think about at all. So probably the most common reason we have homeowners insurance similar to car insurance is because we have a mortgage. We have a bank that lent us the money to buy a house and we're making payments to them every month. And the bank wants to make sure if the house burns down, they're going to get their money back. And so that's kind of the main purpose of homeowners insurance, is to cover the dwelling, cover the actual structure itself. If it needs to be replaced or repaired, say wind damage comes, lots of people have wind damage claims, hail damage claims, that kind of stuff. Your homeowner's policy, depending on the coverage you have, is designed to repair that so that you can get it fixed. If it burns down, the house burns down, or a tornado blows it away, it's going to cover the value of that. Now, one thing to really keep in mind, and this is where it's really important to talk to your insurance agent, is to understand the difference between replacement value and I'm not. I don't remember the term. It's like fair market value, but um, you know what a house is worth, especially if it's not a brand new home. Maybe one thing, especially if it's an older house, the cost to actually replace that could be much, much higher than, let's say, you paid for the home. And depending on the type of coverage, if you have it set at the amount that you paid for the house, let's say it's set at the amount that the lender owes. If it burns down, let's say you have you paid $150,000 for a house and you have $150,000 mortgage, so you insure the dwelling at $150,000. If a fire comes and burns the house down, you're gonna get the 150,000, or the bank will. But let's say it's going to cost $250,000 to go back and rebuild the exact same house. We can't build used homes, right? We can't build anything we replace it with is going to be new, but it might not. You probably can't do it for $150,000. It's $250,000. That's where you got to have that replacement value, or whatever the equivalent language is, to make sure that if the house burns down, you want to be able to replace it. You want to be able to build a new house in its place. So that's where it's really, really important to talk to your insurance agent and read your policy, know what kind of insurance coverage you have. Another type of coverage is coverage for your personal items. So the house burns down, and everything in it, you're going to lose a lot of stuff: clothes, furniture, computers, photos, memorable stuff, right? Pictures. That stuff could be damaged, and that's personal property coverage. As you might expect, that becomes much, much more difficult to quantify because most of us, our houses are full of stuff. We don't go back and check our closets to see how many blankets we have stored away and all that kind of stuff. We probably don't even know how many electronic devices we have in our house at any one time. But that's one of the coverages is for those personal items. Some specialty items, especially like jewelry, collectibles, paintings, high value things, furs. I don't know if anybody has furs anymore, but that was a common language. That coverage may be excluded for those or limited to those unless you have specific coverage for that. That's why they always say, "Did you have?" Yeah, I had a Van Gogh in the trunk of my car when it was stolen. Well, you're going to have to specifically insure priceless items such as that. Otherwise, they're going to be very skeptical about what you have and the value of it. Okay, so coverage for the dwelling, personal property. What's another purpose of homeowners coverage? Liability coverage, similar to what I was talking about earlier when it comes to your car insurance. Your auto insurance provides liability coverage. Your homeowners coverage provides liability protection to you for visitors who come on your property and let's say are injured. Let's say you took down the railing on the steps going up into your house because you're going to fix it, and you never got it fixed, and someone's trying to walk up and they fall off of it. You're probably negligent because you shouldn't leave the stairs without a railing or protection for people so they don't fall. Guess what happens? They go to the hospital. They then make a claim against you. Your homeowner's insurance policy is there to provide liability protection. So, what does that mean? Number one, hire lawyers for you. At their expense, at the insurance company's expense. Number two, pay any liability damages that get imposed on you, personal injuries, lost earnings, medical expenses, things like that. It's liability coverage. Um, Also, like your auto coverage, most homeowners coverages policies will also have med pay coverage. So someone slips and falls on an icy sidewalk outside your house, even if there's no fault on your part, med pay will also cover some basic medical expenses. It may be a few $100, may be a few $1,000s, but it covers the cost of that person to go to the hospital, see a doctor, maybe an ambulance ride, things like that. That's med pay. So I have another example for you. So a few years ago, we had some friends over at our place, and it's like us. They have a number of kids, and so they were over at our property. And we live in the country, and I got kids, and you got stuff laying around, and you got boards laying around, and sometimes you have boards with nails laying around. And we were just kind of hanging around visiting. All of a sudden, one of their kids came around crying and holding this piece of wood. And here, there was a piece of wood with a nail through it, and they had fallen and landed on it, and they're holding this piece. It was nailed into their hand. It's kind of freaky. Um, and so they ran up, and me and this child's dad, who's our friend, kind of got him distracted, and we yanked this thing out of this poor kid's hand. Well, being the responsible parents they are, they took him to the doctor later, and lo and behold, um, one of the bones in the hand had gotten kind of chipped when the nail went into the hand, and so they had to go in and fix that. And then their health insurance, who paid for that, came after me. And so I contacted my homeowner's insurance and said, "Hey, by the way, some friends of ours were over. One of the kids got hurt. This is what happened. And my insurance company's MedPay covered some of their medical bills because it's no fault based, even though my insurance company didn't think I had done anything wrong. It's just one of those accidents that happen. My MedPay covered those medical expenses, but they refused to provide any liability coverage because they didn't think I had done anything wrong. And that's kind of where the end of it. They didn't pursue anything. We're still friends. But those are the kinds of things that can happen. Few things to keep in mind when it comes to homeowners insurance. Pools. Do you have a swimming pool? A lot of insurance policies will exclude coverage for swimming pools unless it's specifically disclosed to them in the application. Some insurance companies won't insure pools at all. So, if a kid comes over and drowns, they may not provide, they may void your insurance policy entirely, may require you to have a fence or a barrier around it. So be very, very careful with swimming pools. Another thing, dogs, pets. Um, some states, a lot of states, such as Wisconsin, has strict liability. So if your dog bites someone when they come to visit, even if it's the tamest dog in the world, you're basically strictly liable for their injuries, and they do happen. Sometimes dogs lose it, especially if they're more of an aggressive breed. And God forbid someone came over and your dog attacked a little kid and chewed him up really bad. Like that's the last thing you want. But if you didn't, your insurance company may have an exclusion for dogs if you didn't disclose them, which is really important. If you move into a place and you get a dog later, you need to know if your insurance policy covers that and if you have to disclose that you have a pet to them. Here's another example, the one that I've gone through. So we use wood heat to heat our home. We have really since our first house, we've heated with wood, and some insurance companies will not insure the dwelling if you heat with wood, or they will, but they charge you extremely high insurance rates. So I did some shopping around. We were fortunate enough to find an insurance company that insured us. All we had to do is make sure that we had the chimney and the wood stove installed according to code. Well, I don't know what the codes are, so when we built our house that we have now, I hired someone to come out and install the chimney, put in a very, very good, I think it's a triple walled Canadian chimney pipe or something like that. Had him install the wood stove that we heat our house with because I did not want any question later on if the house burned down because of it. I didn't want any question about whether there was insurance coverage for it. What you want to avoid, what you want to avoid is not telling your insurance company that, oh, by the way, I've got a wood cook stove now, or I've got a wood stove, I've got a fireplace now and I'm using it. If it burns your house down, you don't want to find out that you don't have any coverage because you didn't disclose it. Yeah, you might pay more in premiums, but it's a lot better deal than having to build a house again that's not covered by insurance. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Um, One thing I want to talk about is flood insurance. And I'll be the first to say I'm not an expert on flood insurance. Flood insurance is one of those there a lot of homeowners policies have exclusions for certain types of things. War being one of them. Acts of God. If a meteor hits your house, you may actually not be insured for it because it's considered just such an impossible thing to predict or anticipate. Um, if war breaks out, insurance companies are not covering the cost of replacing your house if the vandals come in and they pillage your house. Okay. But a much more common thing is flood. What happens in floods or landslides? We had landslides in our area 10, 15 years ago, heavy, heavy rains, and people that have houses either up on the hill or below the hill or on the side of the hill, the hillside gives way and runs water through their house and destroys it. that may be considered flooding or water event, and a lot of insurance policies exclude coverage for that kind of water damage. And a lot of people don't know about it. They think, well, shoot, what did I do wrong? You got a heavy rain, the hill gave way behind our house and it knocked out the basement. How is that not covered? It probably isn't covered. It's really, really important to talk to your insurance agent about those things. Here's the problem. In most in most places you can't get that coverage even if you want it. This is where the flood zone stuff comes in. And again, I'm not an expert on this. Talk to an insurance agent about it. But basically, as I understand it, insurance companies are going to exclude flood or flooding type damage to their homes. And you cannot purchase flood insurance even if you want to, unless you're in a designated flood zone. So the flood zone thing is actually something for the benefit of the homeowners because it allows them to purchase the insurance that they need. And I believe maybe the insurance company is required to offer that coverage to those in flood zones. But if you're not technically in a flood zone, you may not even be able to purchase flood insurance even if you want to. That's kind of a weird wrinkle in it, and it's something that's becoming more and more of a problem. You got like hurricanes and um, rising sea levels, things like that people attribute to climate change. You're getting all kinds of questions about coverage and exclusions for that kind of stuff. Let's see here. So and here's the other thing. I haven't talked about it, but let me talk about a few other types of insurance, and then I'll wrap this up. Renter's insurance. Okay. A lot of people probably don't buy renter's insurance, but renter's insurance is kind of like homeowner's insurance, but it's for a place you don't own. And most renters insurance will provide, again, liability protection, may provide some med pay coverage, and may provide some coverage for your belongings. Let's say if you live in an apartment building and the apartment building burns down or gets blown away by a tornado, the owner of the property probably has insurance to cover the actual structure, but they're most likely not covering your personal items. Okay, your furniture, your clothes, your electronics, and things like that, your valuables. That's kind of up to you. And that's why you may want to get renter's insurance to cover those kinds of things if you don't own a house. Um, you can purchase, like if you have a camper, an RV, there's different types of insurance for that. A lot of times, like ATVs, four wheelers, side by sides, UTVs, things like that are probably not covered by homeowners insurance or may not be covered by homeowners insurance, but you can purchase coverage for that, both liability and property coverage for it. Liability similar to the swimming pool and the dogs. Um, the insurance company probably wants to know if you have an ATV, how big it is, all that kind of stuff. Because let's be honest, people come over, people that are not familiar with it, not used to driving it, hop on it and get into injury, get involved in accidents. Homeowners and company wants to know what our risks are, and they may not provide coverage for it, but they may make coverage available to it if you pay for it. So keep that in mind when it comes to ATVs and boats, um, jet skis, and things like that. What else? I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I'm not going to get into other kinds of insurance, life insurance, health insurance. That'd probably be another video. But home and home renters and auto are the probably the most common types of insurance that most of us deal with at some point in time. And if you're young, you just moved out of the house, maybe you're getting your first house, or you're buying your first car, this may be all news to you. And hopefully this will help provide you with some basic guidance. Again, talk to an insurance agent, shop around, do your homework, talk to an attorney in the state you're in if necessary to help answer those questions. But hopefully that'll help provide you with some guidance. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. So this is the kind of content that I'll talk about on this show. I'll live stream. The plan is to live stream on Mondays around 5:10 p.m. Central Time if I can. I do another live stream for my day job at around 4:30, so I do this after that. And then what I'll probably do is I'll put the recording under the podcast feed so that you can listen to that on YouTube, or eventually I'll have it on Spotify and things like that. That might be helpful to people if they want to listen to this in the in the car, at the gym. If there's topics that you're really curious about, whether it's related to anything I've talked about or something totally different, and you're curious if I know anything about it or be willing to do an episode on it, leave a comment, send me a message, whatever the case may be. I'd be happy to try. I certainly encourage people, if you find my channel and subscribe, to go ahead and show up for the live streams. Like I said, the plan will be to do it most Mondays around 10 after 5, 5:15 most days Central Time. And so I'll be here, and you can always hop on and ask me anything you want, as a lawyer, as a dad, husband, homesteader, farm. I guess I probably didn't even mention that. I have a homesteading channel. That's Homesteading Lawyer. You could check that out. I put all kinds of videos on there about, cutting firewood, running chainsaws, running tractor, construction projects, things like that. You can certainly check that out over there. And if you have questions about any of that, feel free to bring it up on live stream, and I'll be happy to try and answer it that way. So anyway, all right. I've rambled on for over 45 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I appreciate anyone who watched this far and watch my videos, and hopefully you'll subscribe and stay tuned for more. If you have any questions about any of that, let me know. Otherwise, until next time, everyone, have a good one.